Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today on our webinar for some tips and tricks to get your Figured software up to date, ready for the financial year handover to our accounting team and for preparation of your annual accounts. My name's Justine, I'm the software specialist here at McIntyre Dick, and I'm here solely to help you in using your financial software and get the best out of it. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees on the webinar are muted, but if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to drop a question in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to answer any questions we may have. Now I'm just going to turn my camera off and I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, let's get started. Figured. So the first thing to see when we log into Figured, and the very first check I always do, is to ensure that we're looking at our latest data in Figured that has come through from Xero. Figured updates from Xero a couple of times a day, but if you've just finished your coding or making any changes in Xero, you need to ensure that Figured is also up to date. In the bottom left-hand navigation screen, down on the bottom, there will be a button. This is a demo farm, so unfortunately there's not, but there will be a button showing here your Xero connection. You can click on that icon and it shows us the last time that a sync was successful with Xero. When you open this connection, if it was a few hours ago, but you know you've made some changes that you want to see in Figured, you can just press the start button. This forces a sync with Xero and may take a minute or two, but will bring all of your latest data through into Figured. The next check to make before I get started is to look at my top blue toolbar to see that I'm looking and sitting on the correct screen. And I'm looking at the correct financial year for what I'm looking to review. So I'm going to change this now. I want to see my actuals up until the end of last month. So the first check I'm going to go and make is in my trackers. I click on my trackers. The first one I'm going to check is my milk if I'm a dairy farmer. So we want to ensure that our production is showing in our milk tracker. If you're with Fonterra and you have connected your tracker to your FarmSource account, this should be bringing through your production automatically through from your FarmSource account. If this doesn't happen automatically, you can enter that number into Figured and bring that through. Also, don't forget under Tools, the top right here, we can reset to the latest milk pay prices, just to make sure I'm looking at my most up-to-date information. So is my milk production numbers through and my financial information? Once I'm confident that's all correct, I'm now going to check my metrics. Have you checked out these metrics at the top? This is a new feature with Figured. So you can update your production, your milking platform, and your peak cows. This brings through some relevant metrics for your business. If I'm making any changes in here to my milk, don't forget to go and click the green Save Changes button. This is the one area in Figured where it doesn't save as we go. We actually need to remember to click the Save Changes. The next check I'm going to make is in my livestock trackers. I'm going to ensure that all my information in here is up to date. I don't have any alerts showing. If I did have some alerts showing, if I've bought or sold anything in my livestock, an alert would show in here. Are you doing this the quick way? This saves so much time, and I find is the easiest, most efficient way to get the information into Figured. If I had an alert here on my sale of mixed age cows, if I just click into that white box and scroll down, now I can see the transactions that are showing and making up this 59 quantity figure in my sale box. If this wasn't reconciling and I had an alert, it would then tell me, apologies, it would then tell me, and I'd have a button here called import from zero. Even though that button says import,
good stuff.
Point,
good.
Let's call it a let's see what's in zero button. We would click the import from zero, and we could see where we may be missing information that hasn't come into Figured. Here we can also see under this notes column, this notes column here, this is the description that comes through from zero when we've entered that transaction. This is why we quite often will say to you, don't forget to enter a description, even if it's just the quantity and class of livestock you're reconciling in your zero. This is where it pulls through to Figured and makes reconciling so much easier. If I had a transaction sitting here that had a green tick beside it, that means it's not in Figured. So maybe I'd need to update the quantity and tick the green tick to bring that into Figured. This is a great and easy way to get my quantities and my reconciliation of my livestock up to date. I would go through and just double check everything I have in here is correct by clicking in the white box and seeing the transactions down below. Also, with our livestock, don't forget you will need to record, if you're coming to your end of financial year, any deaths or this reconciling column, we can add in any non-financial transactions. So these are transactions that aren't going to come through from zero because we haven't spent or received any money, but we still need to update our quantities of our livestock. This is where we may need to birth some calves or some R1s, but we may need to also record some deaths. Or maybe it's come to the end of the season, we've bought and sold our stock, we've birthed, we've recorded some deaths, but I'm still out one or two. They may have jumped the fence and gone to the neighbours. Or something else has happened, but we need to update our stock numbers. This is where I'd come into my reconciling box, click in that white box. Down below here, I could add a reconciling transaction. I could say, I've lost one of my MA cows and it's jumped the fence. If I green tick that, that's now going to add that transaction into my Figured. And here it shows here. So now I'm confident that my stock on hand is current, or if we're at the end of our season, is accurate. So looking now at the planning grid, this is where I find it's the best place to go just to check that I've coded everything in the correct place in zero where I want it to appear in my Figured. We'll just wait for this to come up. It's always slow when you don't want it to be, of course. But when we're in our planning grid, just remember, if you're unsure of a number or you're not sure where that number has come from, if it's showing in a completed month that you know your reconciling is up to date in zero, don't forget that we can click on that blue number. We can click on the blue number and that will open 0. Unfortunately, I can't do that with this demonstration file, but I could click on that number. It would take me to 0 and show me how that number is made up. Of course, from there, sitting in my 0 tab, I can then click down to a transaction level to see exactly what that transaction is. But just remember, if you need to make any coding changes, I decide it's not a rebate, it's something else that's come in, I need to recode, that change needs to be made in 0. But if you're making those changes, don't forget when you come back to Figured, you will then need to resync your Figured to bring that information back through from 0. Another check I would make in here is we have our tracker information at the top. So I can see here my dairy livestock income and sales, my sheep incomes and sales, and my milk tracker income. Now, here under other income, always review this section. It may be that you have sold, or there could be a purchase in here for a livestock that you may have selected the incorrect code in 0. So it's not putting it up into our trackers up here above this. So it's not putting the figures up here, but it's coming here. We want it to be included in our tracker information because we want to know our gross profit on our milk and our livestock. If it does appear here and it's a livestock transaction, what I would do is I would go back to my tracker and I would open that livestock tracker. Then, once I'm in here, across here on the top, there is this little cog wheel, which is our settings. If I select that, this takes me into our tracker settings. This is going to show me what stock classes down the bottom here. So what stock classes, this would generally populate here with our sales account codes and our purchase account codes in 0 that we have mapped to each particular stock class. It may be that I've coded something in 0, maybe I've called it a cull cow, but I don't have cull cows in here. I actually need to go and recode it as a MA cow for it to show correctly in my tracker and in my planning grid. That's one area I get a lot of questions on, but it's something we should be reviewing when we're coming into our figure. Has anything dropped into this other section that should be up within our trackers? So once I've gone through here, I've reviewed my coding and all my numbers are sitting where they should be, and I'm quite happy with that. We need to start thinking about planning and forecasting for next season. A good place to start this is by using our actual data from this current season we're just finishing. Let's use that as a base to go forward for our next season. To do this, if I go back to my trackers, now for my milk production, this is slightly different. So I go into my milk production, my top blue toolbar, I'm going to go across to my next season. Now here, this works much the same as your milk predictor. I'm going to enter my production in my production column, what my predicted production is going to be. The company milk price, again, depending on who you supply, under your tools, you could update to your latest payout figures for next season, which will populate into the company milk price. But I'm a bit cautious about my budget, so I'm going to set the your milk price column. I'm going to set that slightly lower, just allowing for some movement within that milk price. So I know I can budget my expenses and everything and know that I can afford it. Once I've entered this information in here, again, remember, we need to select Save Changes. The one area in Figured, this doesn't happen automatically. Any changes in your milk, always select Save Changes. For our livestock, there are a number of options we have available here for creating next year's transactions budgets. The first way we could do it is I could go to my tools, I could export my 2023 actual transactions, and I could download that. That's brought that file down here on my screen. I don't need to open it. All I need to do now is go across to my new season, and I can say Tools, and I'm going to import. And I'm going to import to 2024. I want to import forecast transactions. I'm importing my actuals from 23, so I want to adjust my imported dates. Then I'm going to go and find this downloaded file. If I say select file, this is now going to come to my computer. So I'm going to go to my downloads. Here it is here, my export tracker. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to import. What this is doing is importing last year's actual livestock transactions, and that's going to make it the forecast transactions for this coming season. This takes a minute or two, but believe me, it's worth the wait rather than entering everything in. I am going to show you another way to create your livestock budget, which is also a quicker way to do it too. You just need to wait for this to import. It shouldn't take too long. Always takes longer when we're sitting here watching and waiting for it to happen. Okay, now the screen is going to refresh, and it's going to show me I'm sitting my 2024, my full forecast year. So based on the information I had in my tracker last year, I've now created my forecast livestock transactions from my actuals, and they've all been populated into here. Another way that we can create our plan and forecast for our livestock, I'm going to do this in the sheep tracker. This is another quick way we can do it, which I also find quite helpful. As we know, seasons differ, and sometimes things are quite different one year to the next. So I've opened my 2024, I'm in my sheep tracker. Now, in here, at the moment we're highlighted on detail. I'm going to select monthly. So now the screen updates, and I'm going to say I'm going to sell my mixed age ewes. If I click in that sale box, again, if I scroll down here, it brings up my mixed age ewe sales. Now, this is showing month by month. So I could put in, I'm going to sell 100 this month, and they are going to be at $150 a head. Then I'm going to sell another, say, 200 in November. And they are going to be at 200 a head. So now it's brought in my total across the side here, my total financial number. But now I've already put in my forecast that I'm selling 300 ewes. So that's another quick way to get your livestock budget up to date. If I go back to the planning grid, and I'm still on my 2024, building out my budget and plan, this will now bring through, remember we didn't enter any milk production, but we did bring in our dairy cattle livestock transactions through the export, then the import feature. And then the sheep, I did bi-monthly. So when we come to our planning grid, we can now see, here is our dairy cattle forecast transactions we brought through based on last year. And here are my sheep that I was going to sell when I did that by month. So now we can see here we already have some figures populated for the rest of our income and expenses. But if I didn't, if I was starting from scratch, I could, again, on my planning grid, and I'm looking at my cash. So this is when it hits my bank account. I'm going to export my 2023, my actuals plus forecast, actuals to May, and I'm going to download that. So again, that creates a download file on my computer. Then I can import, again through the tools, I can import, actually, look at that. We don't need to do that export anymore. I can import last year's actuals to be my 2024 plan and import. That now brings in through all that actual data as a base for my plan going forward. Then, of course, I can go through and change any figures that I need to based for the current coming season. Another feature I want to show you is also budgeting by your curve. A lot of people get a little bit confused about the curve. This is something that accountants love to talk about, and probably your farm advisor. But let's say we're wanting to budget for our animal health expenses, and we want to base that on our curve from what happened in our last season of when that happened. So for example, I could have spent, jumping ahead here, apologies. We could have spent 60% of our budget, for example, in October. So whatever budget I'm going to put in for my full year for this coming season, I'm going to spread that across my curve from last year as my budget and plan for going forward. Always when you don't want it to happen, the software plays up. Great example. Okay, I'm going to click into my animal health minerals. Right, so now I'm going to spread $100,000 monthly, and I want to, that's putting it across the year. But if I want to do it across my curve, where I have monthly, I click that arrow. Now I have other options. So the curve is how we did it from our actuals from 2023, and I'm going to spread it across where it was spent during that last year. This is a really handy tool, especially if things on your farm happen on a fairly regular basis year to year. Don't forget, once you're happy with your plan, to take a snapshot. Name that snapshot and give a brief description. If this is going to be your first or final budget for the coming season, don't forget to set it as your annual plan. Okay, so now let's look at some reporting. Did you notice that Figure have now released report packs? These are great, and I've set up some myself, especially when I want to do some monthly reports. I want to do a cash flow, I want to do a variance, I want to do a production. I can group them into a report pack, create the report pack. I could call it my monthly reports for my farm advisor and my banker, and add the reports as necessarily. It's just a great way to save some time. What I do want to show you in here is just whenever you're in any of these reports, always remember, we're going to change financial year back to our previous year, but always remember when you're in one of these reports to check the additional options. There's actually some great information to be found in here. Right, so if I select additional options, so we could show quantities if we wanted to, or I wanted to compare it to my snapshots and compare it to my annual plan. So what did actually happen versus what my annual plan said was going to happen? How did that turn out? How was it compare? So here we can see, I'm not sure if you can see on your screen, but we've got different colored lines. I have my white line for my actual, what's actually happened. And then I have my blue line where it has the word comparison. So that was what my annual plan said was going to happen. So as I said, no matter what report you are in, select the additional options because we do find some handy things in there. So have a play around with those and see what works best for you in your business. Remember, at any time, if you need help at all you need to do is give us a call, because we do have our software help desk here, either via email at software@mdp.co.nz or by phoning us on 03 211 0801. We do get busy from time to time, but bear with us, leave a message and we will call you back. So that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for attending. If you require any further information, please reach out. Until next time, thank you.